Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en el mundo. Mi invitado especial en directo desde Mississippi, representando a Impact Wrestling, la voz que conocemos, nuestra reportera favorita, entrevistadora, luchadora, ha hecho de todo en su vida. Gia Miller llega aquí a Lucha Libre Online. Gia, it is an absolute honor to have you as our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's an absolute honor to have you. You have a pretty interesting pathway inside the wrestling industry. You've done everything in it around basically the United States, but I wanted to ask, what caught your attention initially from the wrestling industry?
Oh, just the spectacle of it. I am a natural performer. I have always never shied away from the spotlight, and I have a larger than life personality, so wrestling it made sense for me.
So the spectacle itself caught your attention. Eventually you fall in love with the wrestling industry itself. Which was the role or the figure that you were, looking after? Like, this is the person I want to emulate in the future.
Well, most people know me as an interviewer, and as an interviewer, I've studied a lot of people, Goldilocks, Christy Hemme, Maria Kanellis. I've lots of really great, awesome people, but I also got into wrestling originally wanting to be a wrestler. And my biggest inspiration was, first of all, I fell in love with China when I was younger. Oh my goodness, she was incredible. And then the person that really inspired me later on, the one that I was really like, wow, I think I definitely could do this, was actually Jessica Havoc. I saw her, and I saw some of her indie stuff in her first run with TNA, and she was just so different. Like, she was just so authentically herself, and I loved that, and that really pushed me to want to be myself. Now, I'm nothing like Jessica Havoc, but it inspired me to want to be myself, and she was really the one that showed me that I could do it.
So you, as mentioned prior, you've done many things inside the wrestling industry. You actually wrestle as well. How did this pathway brought you to become a backstage interviewer? Like, first of all, how did you started in the wrestling industry? Like, where did you started? Who contacted you? Who granted you that first opportunity? How do you felt that first night?
It is right place, right time. I just so happened to be qualified and be willing to do it, and I happened to be there when they were looking for somebody. I first started in training and everything in Charlotte, North Carolina with George South. He was my original trainer, and he taught me how to hit the ropes, everything like that. And he hooked me up with someone named Action Mike Jackson, who he's actually wrestled for Impact Wrestling before. He's 72 years old, and he was my tag partner in the middle of nowhere in Alabama, which I'm from Mississippi, but I was wrestling in Alabama at the time. And he got booked for Impact, and he was like, oh, well, just come with me. And I was gonna go to the Impact taping because I happened to be dating one of the wrestlers, but I didn't want to be in the way. And so I was just going to get a ticket and watch. And he was like, oh, no, girl, you come with me. I'm booked on the show, so you come with me. I'm your trainer. And I said, okay. So we go, and I got there pretty early in the day, and they were like, oh, you can go to the makeup room. And I met Madison Rain. We started having a conversation, and through that conversation, she was like, have you ever thought about being an interviewer? And I said, funnily enough, I have a degree in broadcast and journalism, so I would love to. I've never been an interviewer for pro wrestling, but I would love to do it. And she said, okay, I think we're going to give you a tryout. Ended up not being able to try out that day, but I was like, hey, that's the best today could have gone. Got my foot in the door. That's one step, right? COVID happens. Everything shuts down. Impact starts talking about doing the closed set tapings with no audience. And I just so happened to be stranded in Ohio with Sammy Callahan, Jessica Havoc, and Ace Austin. And they were like, hey, bring her with you. And so that was how I got started. And it's been a dream come true ever since.
You got the opportunity with Impact Wrestling. Your life changed. Obviously, everything is different now. Everyone knows you in the streets. Everyone knows you at airports. It's, you know, you are more notorious out there. How you went from, you know, dealing from being this girl from Mississippi that wanted to become a wrestler that ended up being an interviewer for Impact Wrestling, and suddenly you are a meet and greets, you're interviewing huge talent, you are everywhere at the same time. Like, how do you manage all this?
I have always just gone with the flow. I just go wherever the road takes me, wherever life takes me. I just go with whatever I'm told, and I just stay easy. And you're right, it was such a huge change just about overnight. I remember the first episode that aired that I was on, I had like 600 followers on Twitter, and Tommy Dreamer retweeted it and was like, if we can get her to 1,000, I'll eat the difference in Oreos. And I'm pretty sure he did. And that night I was up to like 2,000 followers, and now I'm at like 11,000 on Twitter, which is crazy. And just like, I don't think about it, because when I'm not in makeup, sometimes I'm in disguise, so I don't get recognized very often. But there will be every now and again somebody will come up to me and say, I love watching you, I think you're a great interviewer. And it always just means so much to me. And it's certainly not lost on me, because I'm not very far removed from being a fan. It's only been a couple of years for me, and I still am a huge fan of wrestling, and everyone that I work with, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet everybody. So it's really surreal.
So as a fan as well, suddenly you are in a backstage area. There's Raven, there's Tommy Dreamer, there's Bully Ray, there's everyone you grew up watching. How do you manage to control your emotions and, you know, stay professional in that type of ambience when all you want to do sometimes inside you, the fangirl screaming, it's like, I want to take a picture with this person. I watch you growing up. Like, how do you manage to deal with that?
The best piece of advice that one of my trainers gave me was, act like you've been here before. You deserve to be here. And while I'm always very open when I love somebody, when I've watched someone growing up, I always tell them, hey, you were an inspiration for me, or I loved watching this, and I like to talk about them, about their journey. But I, at the end of the day, we're all professionals. And although I'm a huge fan, I'm also a professional, and I got this job for a reason. So I always hold my head high and say, I deserve to be here. And I think of them as my peers rather than these larger than life superstars, which is what they are. And it kind of makes me feel like one too. It's really interesting.
So you mentioned earlier something, and it's that you're dating an Impact Wrestling superstar, and that superstar is Ace Austin, who have wrestled in New Japan, who have wrestled in every single place in the United States. We recently had the opportunity to interview him at AAW Pro in Chicago. Great guy, extremely talented. Well, how did that happen? Like, obviously the wrestling industry, it's a crazy world. It's a small world where everyone at a certain point will know each other. But how did that, you know, how did the love blossom for you guys?
Funnily enough, we actually met before I had even started training. He went to high school with my best friend in college. She was like, hey, this guy that went to my high school, I think he would be absolutely perfect for you. And I said, no, thanks, I'm good. I am not interested. I don't want to date anybody. I'm fine. And she said, please, please, please. He loves Batman. His favorite color is purple. He did musical theater. He's a skateboarder. He's a professional wrestler. Come on. And I'm like, okay, you have my attention. Let me see his picture. And she sent me his picture, and I said, okay, well, he's kind of cute. All right. But funnily enough, she was like, I don't have his phone number. So like, follow it on Instagram. And I'm like, I'm not just going to message this guy. He has no idea who I am. And now I feel like I know his entire life story. But all I did was follow him, and I didn't need to message him because he messaged me. And he said, let me gather myself because I was not prepared to meet my soulmate today. So he went for it. I appreciated the bravery, and we ended up meeting in person for the first time in 2018 in New Orleans, WrestleCon weekend. And it was the end of the story. As soon as we met, we knew. And so we did long distance for a couple years. And then when I got stranded with him in COVID was when we moved in together. And now here we are.
That's actually my next question. The wrestling industry is a complicated world. People are traveling constantly. Schedules are different. Sometimes he can be in Japan, or he can be in the United States, or he can go to Mexico to work, or he can go to Canada, and you can be at your house and you can be taping. Like, it depends on where you're both located. You're fortunate enough to work for the same company, but at the same time, you still have different schedules. How do you make it work?
I really think us being long distance for those first 2 years really helps. And we used to always say, like, one day it's going to be flip-flopped. One day it'll be opposite. We'll be together more than we're apart. Whereas in the beginning, we were apart much longer, much more than we were together. So we always look forward to that. And so now here we are. We're almost always together. So it makes those times when we're apart a little bit more bearable. And like you said, we work for the same company. So that's great. We get to go to tapings together. We get to fly together. But every now and again, we'll have like a weekend. He's gone this weekend and I'm holding down the fort. I'm working from home this weekend. So I'll take him to the airport and then be there to pick him up. The 5 weeks he was gone for Japan, though, that was the roughest because we had been attached at the hip since COVID. And then he was gone for 5 weeks and it was a 12-hour time difference. But typically a phone call in the morning / nighttime. I'd tell him good morning. He'd tell me good night. And then we'd talk again in 12 hours. It was, we just kind of make it work. And we always look forward to seeing each other when it's all over.
Well, that's really sweet. I want to say something in Spanish, if you allow me. Noviembre 18 y noviembre 19. Ya estamos a 2 o 3 días. Louisville, Kentucky es el lugar. Y vamos a ver Impact Wrestling presentando su evento. Además de que tienen también tapings. Pero el 18 es Overdrive, el super evento de Impact Wrestling. Múltiples superestrellas de gran nombre en acción. Gia Miller va a estar presente 18 y 19 de noviembre. Overdrive y también los tapings de Impact el sábado otro día. Boletos a la venta en este preciso momento en ticketmaster.com. Solamente tienen que ir ahí, hacer clic en Ticketmaster, busquen Overdrive o hacer clic acá abajo, va a aparecerle el enlace. Pero Overdrive, si estás en la zona de Kentucky, eres mexicano, eres boricua, salvadoreño, colombiano, no importa, latino, ya date la vuelta. Una empresa que está brindando la oportunidad de talento latino. Está Black Taurus también por ahí. Laredo Kid está en la empresa, pero está lesionado en estos momentos. Estamos orando por él para que él se recupere pronto. Pero date la vuelta 18 y 19 de noviembre por Louisville, Kentucky para Impact Wrestling. Which leads me to my next point, Gia. Overdrive, the next event for Impact Wrestling is going to be basically in 2 weeks. 2 weeks or so. It's November 18, November 19. 2 shows, 2 big shows in Kentucky. What do we have for those 2 days with Impact Wrestling?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the main event for Overdrive is going to be insane. We already know it's going to be Frankie Kazarian. He's challenging Josh Alexander. And we know he got that opportunity because of Option C, which is so crazy because if you remember, Josh Alexander also cashed in Option C, which it's full circle. I love it. But it's going to be we don't have to talk about that part, but it's going to be an awesome match. And we also know that the World Tag Team Championships will be on the line as well. The major players are going to be challenging Heath and Rhino, but I know my boys are going to hold it down.
So Heath and Ryan are going to keep the titles. That's your prediction. The important part for the audience out there is to get their tickets at Ticketmaster.com or to buy it through the pay-per-view system on Impact Plus. It's really easy.
Yeah.
You just need to click there, get the system. It's like $9.99 a month, I believe. It's like $10 a month. So get it, get Impact Plus. If you're in the area, get the tickets at Ticketmaster. Before we go to our last question, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight to have you as our guest today. Last but not least, Impact Wrestling, at least at this point of their history, over 20 years in the business. But in my opinion, Impact has the best women's division in the planet. And I'm not saying this because you're here. I've been following the product for several years. I love what I see. I love what they're doing. It's completely different. As a woman, how do you feel to be a part of a company that allows you to be yourself and that puts you in the correct spotlight?
I count my blessings every day because I was in a sorority in college, and I was kind of disappointed by the fact that my sisters and I weren't super close. I had a couple close friends, but I say all the time that the knockouts division, I found the sisterhood in that locker room that I thought I was going to find in a sorority. I am constantly surrounded by a bunch of big sisters and big brothers too. The guys are just as supportive as the girls, but we are so close knit, and I really am so thankful to be a part of it. And I know that it's going to help me grow as I'm growing up in wrestling in the knockouts locker room, which is just crazy. So I'm very, very grateful for it.
I know I said it was last question, but I have another one. I apologize for that, but last rodeo, Mickie James, she's doing everything. Everyone who gets in her way, she will scrap it off. She defeated multiple superstars, including Mickie James lately. What are your thoughts on the legacy of a superstar, of a legend like Mickie James?
Oh my gosh. If you know anything about my wrestling career, which if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. You will be able to easily see that Mickie James is one of my biggest inspirations. And if you don't know this, I embellish the hats for her, the hats that she wears with the rhinestones and everything. I've done a couple for her, which is so cool to me to be able to be a part of it, even in some sort of small way, as making something for her that she's going to wear during the last rodeo. But Mickie, I'm trying to get in on the last rodeo. Hey, I'll hang on for 8 seconds. I'm throwing it out there. If I can't say that I'm going to put an end to it, but I'd love to get in on it.
Nobody wants to put an end on it, but if you're going to get in the ring with Mickie James, that's definitely something we will love to see. Gia, it's been an absolute honor to have you as our guest. Thank you very much for your time, to Ross Foreman as well, and the rest of the Impact Wrestling team for making this possible. And let's wrap this up, pero en español. Gia Miller y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en el mundo.